Hello everybody, hope you're doing well. The wait is finally over. Welcome to my review of chapter 992. A lot of great looking action in this one, a lot of double spreads, and some unmet expectations as well. We're going to be talking about all of this right here today, so here we go.
This week, the cover of Shonen Jump reveals Yamato's color scheme, which is awesome. I always wanted Yamato to have white hair. I remember the chapter where she first showed up and takes off her mask, and almost instantly I started getting really strong Kita vibes from Atlantis, so I'm really glad the colors are confirmed now.
I also think it's kind of special that it's just Yamato and Luffy in the cover page. It could be interpreted as something kind of rare and special, and so the Yamato for Nakama cries just intensified. See, here he is with Rayleigh, and this happened right after the time skip. It has chapter 600, which is when the Straw Hats begin meeting at Saboti Archipelago again. So again, it's a special occasion.
This week's color spread takes us aboard a very colorful sea train, and there we can spot several Easter eggs, several references to Oda's hometown of Kumamoto Prefecture. The most obvious Easter egg, aside from Usopp's hat, is the bear, the frickin' bear that we see with Jinbei. That's Kumamon, that is the mascot of Kumamoto Prefecture. He's just over there drinking. Another reference is the picture that you see behind Frankie. That is a picture of Kumamoto Castle. It's a very famous castle in the prefecture. All the Straw Hats are wearing their original post-time skip outfits, which we rarely get to see anymore, so I thought that was a nice touch. Zoro is eating his noodles out of a bowl that has a Kaido dragon on it, so I'm sure that's just gonna fuel the speculation even more. I can already see the theories being something like, Zoro's gonna eat Kaido for breakfast. Confirmed! And then finally, if you look at what Luffy is eating, if you look at the logo on his bento box, you'll find that it's the shape of a horse, a black horse, and as it turns out, horse meat is a dish that is often associated with Kumamoto Prefecture. So that's also a reference to Oda's hometown.
I loved the beginning of this chapter at the entrance of Onigashima because it shows that Big Mom had something cooking from the start. She says that the alliance with Kaido was her idea in the first place, not the other way around. So to me, that makes it absolutely clear that not only is Big Mom going to eventually betray Kaido, but Big Mom is planning on using Kaido for something, for personal gain. What that reason is, I don't know, but I bet you anything it has something to do with the favor, with the lifelong debt that Kaido owes Big Mom.
We have to remember that Big Mom is the head of one of the most prominent networks of information in the series, right? She has this web of sources. She has a lot of influence and connections all over the place. And so setting up a network like that isn't something a fool would be able to do. She also marries and has her children enter into marriages out of what is convenient for her. So again, that's not something a dumb person would do or think about doing. She can be very conniving, and I think this chapter was a great reminder of that.
I also really liked the implied level of respect that Big Mom shows Marco in their conversation. It's not a level of respect that Big Mom shows other characters very often. And so I think it speaks a lot about the history that Big Mom had with Whitebeard. Now, the way the scene leaves off, it almost gave me the impression that there's this implied agreement to kind of stay out of each other's way. Like, I don't mess with you, you don't mess with me. Marco, you do your thing, I do mine. You can tell Marco is up to something because of the way his glasses reflect the light. That look is anime lingo for, I got some hidden intentions and I won't reveal them until it's relevant for the plot. Because remember, Marco knows more about the history of Onigashima than he has said. If you remember when he came back, somebody told him, oh, that's Onigashima Island, that's where we're going. And then Marco said, oh, so they're calling it Onigashima now. So he knows about the island. He knows something about the island that he hasn't revealed yet. I also feel that by having Big Mom talk to Perospero about her alliance with Kaido, she's kind of showing that she kind of trusts Marco to some extent, because Marco is right there hearing them talk. So if Big Mom wanted to attack Marco or something like that, Marco could just be like, okay, then I'm just going to tell Kaido that you're planning on betraying him. Although maybe Kaido already knows that because he's so used to, like, you know, remember his speech about, like, pirates always betraying each other? So the plan was for Marco and Perospero to try and take down Kaido, but because Big Mom supersedes Perospero in authority, it seems like that's not going to happen, at least not for now.
I find it hilarious how we get 3 panels almost back to back of characters running, and the panels are framed pretty much the exact same way, where the character is running towards the left and there's somebody behind them. So it's literally the same format for each of those 3 panels. The first one is Carrot, who is on her way to fight Perospero, which we all anticipated, like that's, kind of expected. So she's going for Perorin because she wants to avenge Master Pedro, but what I think we didn't anticipate was the fact that Wanda would be following her into the fight as well. So it could be a 2v1 against Perorin. It might not, but it could be. Either way, those girls are going to be going Sulong pretty soon. We haven't seen Wanda's Sulong form, and we haven't seen Beppo. I want to see Beppo's Sulong form really bad. But I think Wanda's going to look like a white royal poodle or something. And the thing about Wanda is that technically speaking, she knew Pedro longer than Carrot, so she should also be holding a grudge against Perospero as well. Then we have Luffy trying to make it to the top. Again, he's gained some cover there, some help from some of the Wano samurai. And I think Sanji is the one behind his speech bubble. And then Shinobu is still running away from Yamato, trying to protect Momonosuke, trying to get Momonosuke as far away as possible from Yamato.
Then we get the scene with Black Maria and the Shamisen, which I think the impression that Oda wanted to give with that scene is that he wanted us to think that Black Maria was talking about 2 lovers, right? If you look at that scene, even one of the girls, one of the women says, "Oh, that's so romantic." But I think that's a misdirection. I think that's kind of Oda trying to fool us into thinking that Black Maria is singing about like a romantic relationship, when in fact, I think that she's mentioning or that she's referencing the relationship between Momonosuke and his sister Hiyori. Like, who else do we know in this story right now that have been yearning to meet each other after all those years? Black Maria says that those 2 will meet at last, meaning that it's going to happen, not that it has happened. So it can't be like something in a flashback of 2 people wanting to meet. It's going to happen in the present, and she says that it's going to happen during a snowy, moonlit night. And as it just so happens, it is snowing, and we have a full moon. So it has to be about Hiyori and Momonosuke, and something else. 2 things. Black Maria is playing the shamisen. Who else do we know that plays the shamisen? If you remember, back in the Oden flashback, Hiyori was barely learning how to play it. And she tells Oden, "Oh, but I'm going to get better at it. I'm going to practice and I'm going to get better." And we know that Black Maria is 29 years old and Hiyori is 26 years old. So it wouldn't surprise me if Black Maria was the one who taught Hiyori how to play it, especially, and I can't believe I didn't think about this until this chapter, but Black Maria and Hiyori are in the same line of work. Black Maria has a pleasure house in Onigashima, or like a pleasure house district, and Hiyori was a courtesan in the flower capital. So, just by virtue of the line of work that they share, the 2 of them have to know each other. Also, in chapter 982, when Kanjiro shows up with Momonosuke all beaten up, Black Maria actually shows concern for Momonosuke. She actually takes Momonosuke in her hands and says, "Oh, this poor little boy." And then later on, Orochi says, "Give me back Momonosuke, Black Maria." So she was kind of worried. So to me, it's obvious now that Hiyori has a secret ally within the Tobi Robo, and that it's Black Maria. And that maybe that's why Hiyori hasn't shown up in the story recently. Because if she shows up very soon or too soon, then that would blow Black Maria's cover. Black Maria starts playing the shamisen. I don't know if she's playing Moon Princess, which is the song that Hiyori usually plays, but she starts playing it, and since there's no confirmation until we actually hear the song in the anime, the song that did come to mind was ding 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 ding. This is Kaido coming in for the Scabbards. Shout out to the anime opening for trying to imitate this amazing double page spread.
There's an electric attack that Kaido shoots at the samurai via his roar, which makes sense because like we've seen in the anime, whenever he goes dragon form, you see these thunder clouds above him. Also, folklore-wise, Eastern dragons are usually associated with either elemental control or weather manipulation, and so yeah, he uses lightning on the Scabbards, and they all dodge it, but I think think what's interesting is that if you look at the ground begins to crack. So I don't see how the roof, the top of the skull, isn't going to end up collapsing, especially because we saw that Kaido burst a hole through it when he first got there. Then after that, Nekomamushi comes in there like an electrified Beyblade spinning top thing. So I definitely think this chapter handed the anime a lot of opportunity to expand on the fight, because you know how minks are known for using electricity? And so a part of me thought, like, wait, what if Nekomamushi actually absorbed Kaido's lightning, and that was the thing that gave him the boost to be able to pull off this attack? I think considering what happens later on in the chapter with Raizo, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that the minks could possibly redirect or use Kaido's lightning against him as well. We must be swift as the coursing Rebia man, and Kawamatsu uses Amanogawa, which is the name of a river in Japan. It's also the name of a cherry blossom tree, and so if you watch the anime, you know that the concept of Rio, the concept of flow, is often associated with cherry blossoms. And I found it very interesting that Kawamatsu is the only scabbard that Kaido flings away. Like, he literally sends Kawamatsu flying through a cliff, and so I'm really curious if, like, Oda is trying to set up something there with Kawamatsu. Like, if that's Oda's way of getting Kawamatsu away from the action for a bit, or maybe it's Oda's way of sparing Kawamatsu from the massacre that is to come. It just really stood out to me that he's the only one that gets sent away.
After that, Inuarashi comes in there with his leg blade, and I have to say, I think that's my favorite panel out of the entire chapter. It just looks savage. By the way, if this is what Inu and Nekomamushi are able to do to Kaido, I think we can pretty much imagine how well it went for Jack. You know, after this chapter, and after what Neko and Inu are doing to Kaido, you can kind of make sense out of, like, okay, that's why Jack ended up looking the way he did. We go to the siblings Izo and Kiku. Everybody's using special attacks to be able to damage Kaido, and these two are no exception. Izo uses like special coated bullets of sorts. All of these attacks, you know, have to have some Rio to them, all right? That's been confirmed. You see like these round orbiting slices that hit Kaido, very similar to the way that like Kawamatsu was able to cut him. So there's something to that technique that has Rio incorporated into it.
Anyway, Kaido then decides to act stupid and use bottle breath again, you know, because it works so well the first time, and then Raizo, the ninja troll, steps up to the occasion. Now, with Kinemon cutting the blast, there was no problem, because we knew of Kinemon's ability to cut fire ever since Punk Hazard. Raizo pulling a special scroll out of his butt and then using it to absorb Kaido's blast and then return the attack, that had not been previously established. So, it was poorly foreshadowed. Let's just keep it real. However, we do know that Oda and Kishimoto-sensei are good friends, and so I can just imagine Oda turning over to Kishimoto and saying, I need your help. I have a character who's a ninja in my story, and I want to give him a good technique because right now he's been underwhelming, and I want all 9 Scabbards to be able to land a hit on Kaido in this chapter. And so Kishimoto took Oda-sensei down to the Naruto archives. In Naruto, there is a scene where Jiraiya uses a scroll to absorb Itachi's Amaterasu. It just seals that in the paper. Beyond that, there's a filler episode, Naruto Shippuden 192. This is not a joke, where Tenten pulls out a scroll and releases a fire jutsu to fight some weird monster dog things that are chasing them. Not only is her attack called Dragon Bomb, but the fire release looks like Dragon Form Kaido. Oh, and let's not forget Raizo's Shadow Clone Jutsu, because that's just what he does to wrap the paper around Kaido before he releases the blast again. Now, is everything I just said a total reach? Yes. Yes, it is. But you know what they say. Sometimes you just gotta believe it. All joking aside, I have noticed a pattern in Kaido's fighting style, where each time we've seen him fight, at first he's like in dragon form, just wasting time, no big deal. But then after his opponent pushes him out of dragon form, then he starts taking things a little bit more seriously and turns into his human form. So maybe that's just how he scales opponents in his dragon form, because it happened when he fought Oden and when he fought Luffy as well. So if that logic still applies, given how this chapter ends, Kaido should be out of his dragon form next chapter or so.
In other words, I think characters have to earn Kaido's Raimi Hake. It's not something that Kaido just gives out for free to everybody he encounters. You have to push him, you have to get him to that point where he uses Raimi. Now, even with that, I think it's important to acknowledge that there are some fans that are either disappointed or have gradually become more disappointed in Kaido because of the amount of damage that he's been taking. And so I think it's important to acknowledge those fans, right? Let's not pretend like those criticisms don't exist, right? So let's address them. Let's talk about them. And I'm going to start with 2 questions. Number 1, did Oda hype Kaido up ever since his introduction? Yeah. Let's keep it real. Like, there is some responsibility that comes from the author in regards to hyping up Kaido as this untouchable monster, right? And I get it, because if I put myself in his shoes and think about it from an author's perspective, you want to be able to make your audience excited about what they're reading, right? Keep them invested in your story. Because if you do that, not only do you keep a very loyal fan base, but you can also attract potential new readers to your story. So, did Oda play a role in hyping Kaido up? Yeah, he did. Again, manga is a business, so he has some responsibility, in terms of hyping Kaido up. However, did some fans extrapolate? Did some fans cling to the hype and then in their own minds blow it out of proportion to the point where reality couldn't possibly compare? Yes, that is also true. A lot of people love quoting that line that the narrator has when he's introducing Kaido, where he says, in land, sea, or air, Kaido is the strongest creature. In a 1v1, always bet on Kaido. Some fans love those lines because, let's be honest, those are exciting lines, right? That's exciting hype. But then, we also forget that the narrator also says that Kaido had been captured. So it's not like he can't be restrained. I grew up with Harry Potter, and in Harry Potter, there's something that goes on in the first 3 books that is very interesting, because in those first 3 books, Voldemort, he's just like a looming threat. He's like this obscure figure that is very threatening, but he's in the shadows. You don't really get to see him face to face until book 4. And so, within those 3 books, it's really, really menacing. It's like, wow, this guy is a very powerful wizard, right? And then you get to book 4, and he finally has a body, and he doesn't have a nose. And it's like, wow, that's kind of disappointing. Like this, legendary wizard of sorts is this guy that looks like a fish. And I think that's a little bit of what's going on here with Kaido, where once you have a character center stage and you can see them clearly, you begin to realize, that this character is flawed. It has weaknesses, right? And I know you can say, well, if you can see that with Kaido, why can't you see that with Big Mom? And I do see it. I've had to adjust my expectations. It's a work in progress, right? I don't always succeed, but I will say that when you compare Big Mom to the other Yonko, it's not even close. Like how often she gets clowned on in comparison to the other 3. Or 4 if you count Whitebeard. There's just no contest in terms of how she repeatedly gets treated as a gag. And so to me, it just kind of feels like I'm in a classroom and there's just one student that always gets picked on. And so to me, it kind of feels like I have to say, okay, let's tone it down a bit here. Yes, I get it. The guy is quirky. Every once in a while, it's okay to have a joke, to make a joke. But if you do it repeatedly, it gets old. And so, that's how I feel. But at the same time, I know, I'm very well aware that at some point in the future, Big Mom will look foolish again, and that she will eventually be defeated. And so will Kaido. But in the meantime, I just want to enjoy these characters, the best I can. And so, that's why I loved her comment in the beginning of this chapter. That being said, I also think it's not a matter of people being blind and not accepting that these characters will eventually fall. I think the real argument here is, okay, if they're gonna fall, make that make sense. And so with that in mind, I think it's super obvious, just clear as day, right? To the point where it could almost be considered like a very obvious spoiler that Kaido, or that Oda is setting up Kaido to turn things around, right? He's getting ready to pull a 180 and have Kaido really show his strength, his power. And so I really think that what's going to break or make this deal is how well that shift, that 180 pays off, right? How well can Kaido turn things around for himself after this? That's what I think is going to make it or break it in the minds of a lot of fans. Now, do I trust Oda enough to believe in his capacity to pull this 180 shift successfully. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I would not be here reviewing this series if I didn't believe in his capacity to do so. I think the groundwork is there, like I said. I think Dragon form is Kaido's weakest form. Like, if we're ranking Kaido's forms from weakest to strongest, I think it goes Dragon form, human form, and then hybrid form. And then he can just plug in Awakening throughout, depending on how hard he gets pushed. Also, just to give a little bit more credit to Raizo, in Zou, he does say that because he's a ninja, like, he shouldn't be going out there showing off his techniques. He should be stealthy and live in secrecy. So I guess that sort of works to sort of explain why we didn't know that he could do this thing with the scroll. Also, if you go back to Oden's flashback, chapter 970, there's a panel of Raizo kind of running away from King. And the narrator does say that the battle of Oden and his men versus Kaido and his men did take longer than expected. So it went on for a while. So maybe because King uses fire, right, and Raizo was there up against Kaido's men, like, maybe that's where he came up with the idea to be able to, like, deflect or absorb fire or come up with, like, a fireproof scroll. Now, there is a moment where Kaido does think to himself, I don't understand how these samurai are able to hurt me, are able to cut me. And so that could be one of two things. Either Oda is setting up an explanation for why the Scabbards are able to cut Kaido for a later chapter, and he's going to explain it with more detail later on, or we actually get the explanation in this chapter, which is actually tied to the beginning of this chapter with Marco. If you remember, Marco tells Big Mom the importance and the meaning of the word remnant, which is that just because you loved somebody and served under them, that doesn't take away your freedom to decide your own future or what to do with your life. So we kind of get a bit of that in this flashback with Oden, where Oden is trying to teach the Scabbards Nitoryu, two-sword style. And Kinemon is like, nah, we got our own thing. We got our own techniques. And, you know, as we saw in this chapter, they can do those techniques. They can use them very successfully. And so that's their individual freedom to decide what technique to use. But yet, you have this conversation with Toki. And by the way, that flashback with Oden is taking place after Oden gets back from Laugh Tale, because you see baby Hiyori and Momonosuke there. And so Toki says, and she picks her words very carefully. According to the official translation, she kind of makes it seem as if, like, hypothetically speaking, Oden, if they were to learn your style, they would try to kill each other because they love you so much. They would try to compete to see who is your main disciple. But she kind of leaves it like hypothetically speaking, right? Like, this would happen if they were to learn Nitoryu. But the thing is, if you look closely at those panels, is that it did happen. And Toki was probably the one who had to break them apart from killing each other, because if you look at the panel where Oden is offering to teach them Nitoryu, Ashura Doji and Kinemon are all bandaged up. So that means that even before Oden suggested to try and teach them Nitoryu, the Scabbards were already training. Like, they were already, like, learning Nitoryu and Ryo for themselves. And so the reason for why the Scabbards pretended not to care, not to be interested in what Oden was trying to teach them, is because they were already training themselves to death. They were learning Nitoryu, they were learning Ryo, they just weren't bragging about it. And so that's why by the end, that final attack is just hits on a different level when you appreciate that they were doing that behind Oden's back because they cared so much about him. That little flashback is way more powerful than if we had gotten a flashback of Oden actually training the Scabbards. And so you still have the individual freedom of each Scabbard because they all use different techniques, but the inherited will is the same. Haki equals will. And so to answer Kaido's question about how are they able to cut me, I think this is the answer that Oda gives us in this chapter.
It's sort of like how Marco says in the beginning of the chapter that he's not bound to Whitebeard's words, that he actually has the freedom to decide. And he does. He does have the power to decide what to do next. It's just that he decides to inherit Whitebeard's will. You guys remember what one of Whitebeard's final orders was to his crew in Marineford? Well, in case you don't, I'll just leave it here. It's kind of a cool contradiction where you say you're not going to do something, you say you're not going to follow through, But then because actions speak louder than words, you essentially end up being a reflection of the will and the influence that that person that you loved had. It's just that you're free to express it in your own way.
And that's going to do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you appreciated the video and the points that I brought up, leave me a like. That helps out the video and the channel. Overall, because of the reasons I explained, I do think this chapter was a good one. The artwork in it was amazing. It's also a chapter that I think is very worthy of discussion. So as always, let me know how you feel about it down below in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe. Take care of yourselves. Catch you guys later. Bye.